What's up everyone and welcome back to the World History Channel. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button today. Let's get started. 15 incredibly bizarre facts about rocket scientist Jack Parsons. To put it mildly, the man who established the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, JPL, and is regarded as the father of rocket science was Jack Parsons. Despite his belief that the two were one and the same, Parsons led a double life, one of science during the day and dark magic at night. He conjured spirits and ancient deities, and he delved into sex magic. He believed he had no limits and could manifest energies just as real as the once believed impossible science he helped create. The people he was known to associate with were eccentric and sometimes controversial. Aleister Crowley, a cult leader and prince of darkness, was his mentor. Parsons even became a priest for Crowley's Order of Thelema. Parsons also became friends with Scientology founder L. Ron Hubbard and ended up contributing to much of Scientology's foundation, as he and Hubbard would discuss magic and philosophy for hours on end. As brilliant a scientist as he was, it wasn't long before his unorthodox personal life began to affect him professionally. Much like pet owners who begin to resemble their animals, this mad genius began to mirror his work, becoming highly explosive. In the end, he became too unpredictable to work with, and one of his experiments ended up leading to his death at just 37 years old. Parsons was mentored by Aleister Crowley. Parsons adhered to Thelema's occult philosophy, which was established by occultist Aleister Crowley. In the late 1930s, Parsons joined the Ordo Templi Orientis, the OTO, in Los Angeles and partook in their drug-fueled, sexually charged rituals. According to Crowley, he had a revelation in Cairo, Egypt, in which the spirit Iwas dictated an entire prophetic text to him. This text became known as the Book of the Law. This acid trip became a religion and a way of life for Parsons and many others. Not only that, but Parsons was also actually mentored by Crowley. They eventually became very close, and Parsons was promoted to a priest of the Los Angeles chapter. He and his cult ate menstrual cakes. As part of the OTO, Crowley and Parsons would perform the Gnostic Mass, which Crowley devised as a perversion of the Catholic Massachusetts. During the Mass, an altar of candles and hieroglyphic patterns stands together with an upright coffin on a black and white stage, awaiting the ceremony's officiants to emerge. In the coffin, the priest awaits the arrival of the priestess who, once she makes her entrance, leads the ceremony and prayers along with the priest. During their unholy version of the Eucharist, all those present drink wine and eat the cake of light, which is made with menstrual blood among other things. Yes, as in actual cakes made with actual menstrual blood inside them. He bought a mansion for sex magic and all things hedonistic. With all Parsons's rocket science genius, he became pretty rich, naturally. What did he do with his riches? He bought a mansion on Pasadena's Millionaires Row and welcomed his sex magic cult into it with open arms, and it quickly became a den of hedonism. In addition to housing all of the OTO's operations, all sorts of eccentrics became frequenters of the parsonage. The house was always full of people, including science fiction writers, poets, scientists from the Manhattan Project, and self-proclaimed witches. Many of them wore strange masks and costumes while they were there. He made his marriage a foursome after seducing his wife's 17-year-old sister. Apparently, there was no line Parsons wouldn't cross when it came to sex. Ritual sex, adulterous sex, and even a little bit of incest. It was all fair game to him. Parsons began having a sexual relationship with Sarah, the 17-year-old sister of his wife, with the support of his church. His wife, Helen, started sleeping with another man around the same time, a senior member of the church named Talbot Smith. The four of them decided to move into the parsonage together and continued to have multiple sex partners while also engaging in group sex, for ritual and recreational purposes, until Jack and Helen Parsons finally divorced. He became frenemies with L. Ron Hubbard, who stole his girlfriend. After crossing paths with Scientology founder L. Ron Hubbard, Parsons quickly fell under his spell. The two became friends and confidants. They fenced together. They discussed philosophy and magic together. They were even rumored to be sexually involved, and by 1945, Hubbard was living at the parsonage. Hubbard greedily worked his way through many women in his time at the parsonage. Right on through, in fact, to Parsons's girlfriend Sarah. Sarah was very taken with the sci-fi author, and she and Hubbard ended up founding Scientology together. He tried to conjure up a new girlfriend. After Parsons's lover/sister-in-law became enamored with L. Ron Hubbard, Parsons turned to his trusty old black magic. He became obsessed with researching things like ghosts and poltergeists and decided to conjure up himself a new lover. That's right. He decided to summon up an elemental to be his new girlfriend, and the ritual involved him masturbating onto magical tablets to the sound of music. It was after one of these rituals in 1946 that Parsons met his soon-to-be second wife, Marjorie Cameron. He was convinced his ritual worked, and she was his elemental. She was even the inspiration behind his book of poetry, Songs for the Witch Woman. Parsons and Hubbard tried to summon a goddess together. Hubbard and Parsons teamed up to perform an Enochian magical ritual known as the Babylon Working, which basically involves trying to incarnate an actual goddess. The ritual took weeks, during which the two men engaged in ritual chanting while waving swords in the air and drawing occult symbols. Then they broke out the runes and dripped animal blood on them. Finally, they attempted to impregnate magical tablets by masturbating on them together. News of this got back Crowley, and he was actually appalled. The founder of a sex cult, the guy widely known as the wickedest man in the world, was appalled. In a telegram, he called Parsons a weak fool, and insisted Hubbard was a swindler taking advantage of Parsons. He was right. Hubbard just gained Parsons's trust, stole his girlfriend, and ran off with $20,000 under the guise of a business investment that Parsons never saw again. He had affairs with secretaries, recited pagan poems, and hosted duels. Those who worked with Jack Parsons, especially members of his Rocketry suicide squad like Edward Foreman and Frank Molina, would often hear him recite a poem to Pan that was penned by Crowley while he worked on his Rocketry experiments. Sure, this could be a little strange, but the real issue was his excessive lifestyle spilling out into work. His devil-may-care attitude led to dangerous behavior that put the business at risk. He'd have not-so-subtle affairs with secretaries and host duels out on the rocket testing range. He and Edward Foreman would literally fire off guns at each other's feet, trying not to flinch. On one occasion, Fritz Zwicky insisted on a particular type of rocket fuel that Parsons didn't want to try. So Parsons decided to go out to where this fuel was being stored and just blew the whole batch up. He literally blew up inventory. He was investigated by the FBI, then booted out of his own business. All the negative attention Parsons and his mansion of black magic and debauchery, the parsonage, were attracting led to an FBI investigation. Parsons's cult involvement seemed like it could be a threat to national security. By day he was a rocket scientist working for the government, and by night he was jumping out of coffins, eating menstrual cakes, and trying to conjure up poltergeists to have sex with. Naturally, the FBI got a little worried about his headspace. They found no sign that he was a real security risk. It didn't matter though. As the Cold War set in, people were being frozen out left and right for being alleged communists or sympathizers. After World War II, Parsons and several of his colleagues ended up losing their security clearance anyway. The government didn't have room for people with quirkiness. He made his own magic. After having created his own science and then being squeezed out of it, Parsons decided to create his own magic as well. He didn't want to just work Crowley's spells. He was convinced he could combine science with magic and explore all of the physical and metaphysical realms. He was rebelling against the very concept of limitations to the human experience. He didn't see himself or humankind as a race that needed to stay tethered to the earth. Space travel, dimensional travel. It was all possible in his mind, and he set out for the physical evidence to prove it. He threw himself into his magic. He got so freaky, he creeped out his own cult members. In time, OTO members actually started worrying about Parsons's sanity. His non-stop attempts at manifesting things were really starting to freak them out. Jane Wolfe, one of the members, wrote Carl Germer about her worries. There is something strange going on. Our own Jack is enamored of witchcraft, the Haumfurt voodoo. From the start he always wanted to evoke something. No matter what, I am inclined to think, so long as he got a result. He died in an explosion while mixing chemicals in his lab. After being ousted from the Rocketry game, Parsons had taken on some consulting jobs, and he was doing some pyrotechnics work for the film industry at the time of his death. So, it wasn't strange that he had explosive materials in his possession. It was the type of materials and how they seemed to have been handled that seemed suspicious. It was June of 1952. Parsons and his conjured-up elemental of a wife, Marjorie, were planning a trip to Mexico after he finished up a few things in his lab. It seems that while working with an extremely volatile chemical, there was an explosion involving mercury in Parsons's lab. He was still alive when police arrived, but not for long. Half of his face was missing, and his jaw and skull were exposed. His right arm had been blown off, and his legs were in a crumpled heap positioned unnaturally before him. Surrounded by occult documents, he was apparently trying to tell the paramedics something about the explosion, but his injuries made him impossible to understand. He died from his injuries, and upon hearing the news, his mother overdosed and died as well. Strange circumstances led people to think Parsons was assassinated. It appeared he was mixing chemicals in a can, which he dropped. His death was ruled an accident. But this scenario involves the founding father of rocketry stirring highly sensitive chemicals in a tin can, which seems highly unlikely. In another twist, there was also a morphine-filled syringe found at the scene, suggesting Parsons was drugged. Those who knew him scoffed at this being an accident, claiming Parsons was far too careful and meticulous, and he wouldn't be using a tin can to mix anything. And, according to chemical engineer George Sandtimers, the explosion had to have come from beneath the floorboards. This led to claims that Parsons was assassinated, that the explosion was a government cover-up. There was a theory going around that Howard Hughes had Parsons assassinated. Apparently, Parsons was believed to have stolen Hughes's aircraft company documents. Some claimed it was the work Parsons had done for Israel at one point that motivated it, and anti-Zionists killed him. Finally, others believe he died during an attempt to create a homunculus. Some say that Parsons was murdered by police who wanted revenge. Parsons served as an expert explosives witness during the trial of Captain Earl Kinnett. Kinnett was a corrupt police officer who was accused of attempted murder and conspiring to set off a car bomb. Kinnett ended up being convicted, largely on Parsons's testimony and reconstruction of the car bomb. Because of this, and the fact that it was an explosion that killed him, some claim Parsons was murdered by police officers as vengeance for testifying against Earl Kinnett. When in doubt, blame demons. Artist Renata Drux stated she believed Parsons's death was due to a ritual he had been performing. She theorized the explosion was caused by a conjuring gone horribly wrong. She posited that perhaps he summoned some kind of fire demon by mistake. The rite was a combination of alchemy and the theory of preformism, which claims organisms develop from miniature versions of themselves. What he was trying to create was a homunculus, a teeny tiny creature of folklore, often compared to the golem of Jewish faith. Jack Parsons, born John Whiteside Parsons on October 2, 1914, in Los Angeles, California, was a pioneering American rocket scientist whose life was as explosive as the rockets he developed. Co-founder of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, JPL, and a key figure in the development of solid rocket propellants, Parsons's scientific achievements were overshadowed by his deep involvement in occult practices, creating a legacy that intertwines science, mysticism, and controversy. 1. JPL's inception and contributions to science. Parsons's journey into rocketry began in the early 1930s when he, along with colleagues Frank Molina and Edward Foreman, formed the Galset Rocket Research Group at the California Institute of Technology, Caltech. The foundation for the establishment of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory was established as a result of their work on the military use development of jet-assisted takeoff, JATO, technology. Parsons's innovative approach to solid rocket fuels was instrumental in advancing U.S. rocket technology during and after World War II. 2. Introduction to the Occult and Aleister Crowley. In 1939, Parsons's life took a dramatic turn when he encountered the teachings of Aleister Crowley, the British occultist and founder of Thelema. Parsons and his wife, Helen Northrop, joined Crowley's Ordo Templi Orientis (OTO), a secret society that combined sexual liberation, mysticism, and ritual magic. Because Parsons was so deeply involved in these practices, he came up with a magical name, Belerion Armilis al-Dajjal, to represent the Antichrist in Thelemic philosophy. 3. The Parsonage, a hub of occult activity. In 1942, Parsons purchased a mansion in Pasadena, known as the Parsonage, which became the epicenter of his occult activities. The mansion hosted numerous rituals, orgies, and gatherings of like-minded individuals, including writers, artists, and fellow occultists. These events often involved the consumption of substances and practices that were considered taboo by mainstream society. 4. The Babylon Working, attempting to manifest a goddess. In 1946, Parsons embarked on the Babylon Working, a series of rituals aimed at manifesting an incarnation of the goddess Babylon, the Scarlet Woman of Thelemic lore. Parsons, along with L. Ron Hubbard, performed elaborate rituals that included chanting, sexual magic, and the use of ritual tools. The rituals culminated in Parsons meeting Marjorie Cameron, whom he believed to be the physical manifestation of Babylon. 5. Relationship with L. Ron Hubbard and the formation of Scientology. Parsons's association with L. Ron Hubbard, the future founder of Scientology, began in the early 1940s. Hubbard became a member of the parsonage community, and the two engaged in discussions about magic, philosophy, and the occult. However, their relationship soured when Hubbard became romantically involved with Parsons's girlfriend, Sarah Northrop, and subsequently absconded with $20,000 of Parsons's money under the guise of a business venture. 6. FBI investigation and loss of security clearance. During the Cold War, Parsons's unconventional lifestyle and associations attracted the attention of the FBI. His involvement in communist circles at Caltech and his membership in the ACLU raised concerns about his loyalty. In 1948, Parsons was stripped of his security clearance, effectively ending his career in rocket science. Despite his protests and attempts to clear his name, he was permanently barred from working on classified projects. 7. Final years and mysterious death. After his fall from grace in the scientific community, Parsons turned to other ventures, including working in the film industry as a pyrotechnics expert. Parsons was killed in an explosion at his Pasadena home laboratory on June 17, 1952. The circumstances surrounding his death remain mysterious, with some speculating that it was the result of a botched experiment, while others believe it was a deliberate act. 8. Legacy and cultural impact. Despite his relatively short life, Parsons's legacy endures in both the fields of rocketry and occultism. His contributions to rocket science were foundational to the development of the U.S. space program, yet his occult practices have fascinated and perplexed scholars and enthusiasts alike. Parsons's story has been the subject of books, documentaries, and television series, highlighting the complex interplay between his scientific achievements and mystical pursuits. 9. Controversies and public perception. Parsons's life was marked by controversies that affected his public image. His open engagement in occult rituals, unconventional relationships, and defiance of societal norms led to his marginalization in both scientific and religious communities. The juxtaposition of his groundbreaking work in rocketry with his esoteric practices created a dichotomy that continues to intrigue and challenge perceptions of genius and eccentricity. 10. Re-evaluation in modern times. In recent years, there has been a re-evaluation of Parsons's life and contributions. While some view him as a visionary whose scientific innovations paved the way for space exploration, others focus on his role in promoting alternative spiritual practices. This duality reflects broader societal debates about the boundaries between science and mysticism, and the complexities of human identity and ambition. 11. Parsons's influence on popular culture. Parsons's life has left an indelible mark on popular culture. His story has inspired various works of fiction, films, and artistic endeavors that explore themes of ambition, rebellion, and the quest for transcendence. These portrayals often emphasize the dramatic aspects of his life, blending fact with fiction to create compelling narratives. 12. The intersection of science and the occult. The fusion of Parsons's scientific endeavors with his occult practices raises questions about the nature of knowledge and belief.